Definitely a big welcome to everyone to our session today on talking about SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive files. I think it's a topic that I hear a lot. It's like, where should I be saving my files? And when I am in those places, what can I do with them? What actually is available? So I think this is a great subject, especially starting off the new year, really kind of getting into sometimes changing the habits that we have as well. And I'm going to be starting out today. I just want to mention one thing before we get started. I have two different tabs open on my internet browser right now. One of them is my Microsoft account. So I'm not sure if you go to the internet to log into your Microsoft account very often, but there have been some changes. If you didn't attend our last webinar that we had where we talked about what's new and what's coming, Microsoft has changed their branding. So instead of it back in the old days, we used to call it Microsoft Office, and then they were calling it Microsoft 365. Just so everybody knows that when you come into your Microsoft account online, you're going to see Welcome to Microsoft 365 Copilot. That's because that's the new name. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. Also, one other thing, if you do have it saved as a favorite, I have mine across my favorites bar so that I can just quickly and easily get into it. There is a new URL. So up at the top, you're going to see that it's m365.cloud.microsoft.com is the new web address. If you had it saved prior, it will automatically redirect you, but if you want to get your links updated, just so you know, there is a new URL. There's also a new logo, and they're making some other changes, but we won't worry so much about all those other changes. Now, when you come into your Microsoft account, of course, this is one way that you're going to be able to access Microsoft Teams, Microsoft OneDrive, Microsoft SharePoint, but your recent files. So when we talk about working with your files on the cloud, so not the files that are on your C drive, on a flash drive, on a network drive, just the ones that are in your cloud, which refer to SharePoint and OneDrive, those are accessible right here. So you can see on my list right here under recommended, I could go into a recent file that I was working on, or I can scroll down and see other files as well. So we can access files from a lot of different places. I don't have to go specifically to the app that it's related to. And we're definitely going to see a lot more of that as I go into Teams and I go into other areas. We have access to our files in multiple places. But I want to start out with SharePoint. So I have a tab open on my browser for a SharePoint document library. So this SharePoint site that I have for my clinic, so at the top left, it's the name of the site called Clinic. On the left-hand side, I actually have a couple of document libraries. I can open a document library just by clicking on the name of it from my navigation on the left-hand side, or you can have them as a shortcut in different places. And we'll talk about shortcuts going to File Explorer / OneDrive as well. But when you come into a document library, what you're going to find is that there is a menu located across the top. So first off, what is a document library? So when you have a SharePoint site, a document library is where the documents will be stored within that specific site. Each SharePoint site can have multiple document libraries so that we have an easy way to organize what content actually goes into those document libraries. So in one site, I could have 4, 5, 7, 20. I could have as many document libraries as needed. And not everybody that has rights to that SharePoint site needs to have rights to that document library. We can have different permissions for different libraries. So I happen to be in a basic library called Documents. This could be available to everybody that has rights to this Clinic SharePoint site. But I have another document library on the left called Legal Documents. I could have this document library only available for specific people. So not everyone can have access to it. I kind of think of SharePoint as being the top of the giving us the most features when it comes to managing our files, giving us the highest level of security, giving us the most used capabilities with our files. The name SharePoint lets you know that these are files that are shared with other people. Coming from the SharePoint site, whoever has rights to the site has rights to the document library unless we change the permission levels. So we always have to keep in mind that anything in SharePoint is not just for you. The reason we have this is because we want a convenient, easy way to be able to share files with other people. When you come into the library, you'll see a menu going across the top. That menu is related to working with the entire document library. But if you select a file, you'll get tools related to working with just that file or folder. So as you can see, I have both files and folders within my document library to organize my information. But going across the top, if you wanted to create a brand new file, you can actually do that right within the document library by going to New. We can create new folders, new Word documents, new form surveys, PowerPoints, whatever it is that you need. Now, do I do it that way? Not all the time. Because if I already know that I want to create a new workbook in Excel and I want to save it to my SharePoint site, I can just simply go to Excel and I can either open or I can create new and save the file directly within any of my document libraries. So I don't always go to the document library to create something new. It's whatever your habit is. Some people use online Excel, some people use the desktop version. We can do either. Matthew, did someone have a question or comment? Are you muted? Can't hear you. Okay, if you want to work on that, and I'll keep going, you can come back to me. Thank you. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that if I'm in Excel, I can simply click New, create a blank document or use a template like you normally would, and I can start out with my 2025 sales for current products, whatever it is that I need to do. But the thing about this is at the top, I can click where it says the current name of the generic book one. I can come in and tell it exactly where I want this to be saved. So if I want this saved in that clinic site, I can open up my save as. I can go to my different connections to my different SharePoint or team sites or OneDrive, and I can choose exactly where I want it to be saved. So if I want this to be in my legal documents, because I have rights to that document library, I can choose that, choose a specific folder within there if I needed to, or I could even create a new folder. So I don't have to be in SharePoint to manage this, okay? So anyway, just so you could see. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a name for this, and I'm going to call it 2025 Sales Products, and just press enter. Now, of course, I could continue to make changes to this. The autosave would be turned on because in a cloud situation, this autosave is turned on automatically. Matthew, can I hear you yet?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, there we go.
Sound like a commercial. Can you hear me now?
All right, someone has a document in a library. Say they have 3 folders down from the root of the library. How do I tell? They want to know, how do I tell my team member with permissions to the whole library to edit a specific file on their locally synchronized copy of the file? They all edit their files in locally synchronized library.
Okay, so if I'm reading this right or heard you right, how do I tell my team members with permissions to the whole library to edit a specific file on their local synced copy of the file? So I think what we're referring to here is if you have a add shortcut to OneDrive, this is adding a shortcut specifically for that file or for this document library directly to, and let me go ahead and show you this feature. So I'm going to click Add Shortcut to OneDrive. What this does is adds a shortcut available through OneDrive and available through File Explorer, which I'll show you once I go into those. It's telling me I already have it there because I use this very often. But just so you know, I can now access that document library. So we can share a link, share a path to that file directly to the people that we want to say, go to this file. Otherwise, you're going to want to tell them, this document library, this folder, this file name. And by the way, when it comes to the naming convention, there shouldn't be multiple files with the same name. We really want to concentrate on that because we can search for files. And talking about Copilot and all these great features that we have, we can actually say, I want to get a summarization of this file based on this name, and it's going to be confused if we have the same name of the file multiple times. So it is best practice to make sure that every file does have a unique name. Okay, I hope that helped. I hope that answered the question. But anyway, I'll come back and talk a little bit more about what I meant by add the shortcut to OneDrive in just a few minutes. But I want to talk more about, so we started on the new. New is a great way to get started with creating a new file. But if you already had a file created, whether it's on a network drive, on your C drive, or a different physical location, doesn't matter where, you can always click Upload. Upload allows you to click files, or an entire folder can be brought up to SharePoint. But what's going to happen is once you navigate to the physical location of where that file is stored at. So let me just show you an example. I'll just go to training documents. I'll go into Adobe. And let's say that I have this file that I want to bring in. I can select all the files that I need, and I'm going to click Open. One of the issues that we need to, I shouldn't really call it an issue, but one of the things that we need to keep in the backs of our minds is we just made a copy of that file. The file still resides in the original location that we uploaded it from. So now we have two copies of it. You want to go back to the original location and remove it if this is going to be the one you want people to actively be using. We don't want to have people confused on the same file being in two different locations. You're going to end up with nightmares. So just so you get the habit of saying, okay, I'm going to go back to the other location and get rid of that file. Just use it here. Okay. We also have a couple of other things that I want to mention going across the top. We have something that is actually brand new. And the thing that is brand new right now is create an agent. Agents are one of the, if you attended our last seminar, we talked about agents, but agents are our biggest tool that we'll be utilizing throughout 2025, or getting started with in 2025. They now have added the Copilot agent icon to the menu at the top. That's brand new. But anyway, a couple of other things to mention. We could pin a document library to our list on the left-hand side when we go to other places that we can access our files. So if you want quick, easy access to it from OneDrive and other areas, you could pin it. Also, we could export a list of the names of the files. Isn't very relevant, but just so you know. We also have the ... menu. From that menu, a couple of things that I want to mention. We can get into our automation of rules. This is part of your Power Automate, where if you want to automate a process, this is a way that you could quickly and easily do that. Otherwise, we have this feature called Alert Me. This is one of my favorite features in SharePoint. We don't have this in OneDrive. It is available through a Teams document library because it is SharePoint, but it is a SharePoint feature. But what this allows us to do, when you click Alert Me, we can set up an alert for an entire document library or for a specific file within a library. So what it does is we can give the alert a name. It's going to email you a notification letting you know that changes have happened inside this document library. So if you're the person that is responsible for this document library, you definitely want to know if something is happening in the library. Things can be a new item is added. An existing item has been modified. Items have been deleted. So if you want to know that these things are going on, you can set up an alert and it will email you when changes happen. So all you would do is fill it out. How often do you want to have the alert sent to you? You click OK and it automatically works. You will receive an Outlook email letting you know what has happened, and it gives you a link to that document library so you can quickly and easily get back into it as well. If you want to do that same thing, but for just a file, because you want to know if somebody changes a file and things like that, you could go directly to the file within the document library, right-click. From the right-click menu of any file within a document library, you have a lot of different choices. Look at all these different features. Towards the bottom is where you will find the Alert Me. If you choose Alert Me for a specific file, you will be notified based on that file. Once again, you would give it a name and set it up and then click OK, just so you're aware. It works the same, but it could be just for a file. I don't always need it for the whole library. It could be a file that I created and I want to know if things happen to that file because other people do have access to it. And speaking about that, if you open up a file, like I'm going to open up this one that I just added, the one that I just added through Excel called 2020 sales. I want to open that file up and make some changes to it or whatever. As soon as a file is in a document library, it keeps track of version history. It doesn't know anything that happened prior to the file. So if I bring a file from my network drive, it doesn't know anything about the changes that happened before. But as soon as it's in the cloud, it keeps track of the version history. So I can come in and I can start making changes to this file, whatever I need to do. So I can bring in my months, I can change the formatting, whatever it is that we want to do to a file, we can come out and make those changes. But while I'm in this file, anybody else that has rights to that document library could open this file as well, unless I had individual security on the file itself. But we would know if somebody else was in the file by looking at the top right next to the comments there. It would show the profile circle for the people that have it open, and you would be able to know where they are located within that specific file. If it's somebody from outside your organization that happened to have rights to it, or you shared it with them, it would say GC instead of their name. Guest contributor is what the GC stands for, just so you know. But otherwise, it's pretty cool that we can have multiple people work on a file together. I absolutely love having live collaboration. And we can be doing that with any files within Teams, SharePoint, or if you're have files in OneDrive and you share those files with others, you can do live collaboration with them. But anyway, I just made some changes to this file. I'm going to go ahead and close it. And by the way, when I opened it, by default, it opened in the online version of Excel because it was an Excel file. But I'm going to go ahead and just close this file because I don't necessarily need it anymore right now. Because when I'm in my document library, I mentioned that we have version history. I'm going to go back to that file. And by the way, it was called 2025 Sales Products. I'm going to right-click on that file to show you my menu choices. Back into my menu choices, towards the bottom, I have version history. If I click version history, it's going to open up a list of all the different versions of that specific file. We can see who modified it. We can see the file size. We can see the date, the time, all that information. And we can always go back to a previous version. So if I go back to the first version of this file, I click on the modified date, it will automatically open that file based on how it looked on that date and time. If I want to restore that to become the current version, I can do that from right underneath the ribbon. It says previous version. To make this previous version the latest version, I could click restore. So it would allow me to restore this to be the current version. I'm not going to do that, but just so you know, you could, because we have this version history. But kind of stepping back a second, one of the things that I really like about SharePoint is the fact that we have the capability of checking a file out. So if I have a file that I want to make specific changes to, but I don't want anybody else to be able to open that file and work in it right now, I can actually go down towards the bottom. I'm going to hesitate on more. When I right click on the file, I go to more. I'm going to click checkout. So that file is open exclusively by me. I'm the only one that can make changes to it right now. I can see that it's checked out because of this red dot with the arrow. And then I can go back into the file, make my changes that I need to make without anybody else being in there. So if I had some formulas in the background and, some other things like that I didn't want other people to see me do or whatever, I could come out here and I could be making all those necessary changes. And when I'm done, I'll just go ahead and close the file again. Of course, it automatically is saving those files as we make changes. I can hesitate my mouse on the file because then right from the hesitation, I get a menu where I can click check in. So once I'm done, when I have it checked out, I have to check it back in to allow everybody else to be able to go back into that file. So I'm going to hesitate on this file. I'm going to click the check in. It allows me to type in comments. So I can make a comment about what it is that I changed. Changed the formula for, I can't spell, formula for 2025 or whatever the case would be. I'll click check in and that file is now available for everybody else. So if I go back into the version history again, by right clicking, I go back into the version history, it's going to show that updated version that I just did. And you can see the comments on the right hand side. Matthew, do we have a question?
Yes, we do. Someone's wondering, if you restore a previous version to the current version, does it still keep the recent versions?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Great question.
And how do you find both versions?
From here.
From here. And does it create a new stub or a new text that helps you distinguish the two files?
All it's going to do is show you the version numbers. So if I go back to version 2, so I have version 3 and I have version 2. What this allows me to do is to restore it as the current version, but version 3 is still going to be there. So it's going to take 2 and put it as current, and then it's going to still keep 3. And then, of course, any changes from there, it will keep track of those as well. So I'm going to click restore, just so you can see I'm clicking restore to restore that as the current version. So now it's back to version 2, which is now the current version. So if somebody goes to open the file, this is what it's going to look like.
Okay.
So if I close that, I have to close this for it to refresh, but let me close that again. If I go back into version history again, it has that as the current version now is version 2. So it added a version 4, if that makes sense.
Got it. Is there a way to create a copy of the file so that you can have two different versions of it?
Well, technically you could. You would just do a save copy. So anytime you're in a cloud-based file, when you open the file, you can go to the file menu and do a save copy, and then you can give it a different name and or location. It's duplicating the file basically. So create a copy. Okay.
All right. And then someone's wondering, is there any indication as to how the different versions are related? I suppose it's just the 1, 2, 3, the order in which they were created.
The order in which they were created. But just so you know, what if you needed to compare those? What if I needed to compare this version with this version? We do have capabilities of doing that, just so you know. A little bit beyond the scope of our class today, but yes, we can do that as well.
Amazing.
It is. It's pretty cool. So when it comes to managing files within SharePoint document libraries, let me show you a couple of other things. If you right-click again on the name of a file, one of the features that is unique to SharePoint It's unique to SharePoint. You can go to the, it's called Automate, and you can use a built-in workflow called Request Sign-Off. We can't do this in OneDrive, and it's technically not available in Teams, even though it's SharePoint Document Library as of today. But if I click Request Sign-Off, it opens the workflow that is automatically created. We don't have to develop it ourselves. It automatically is going to connect to the applications that it needs to send this out. So basically, I can choose who do I want to send this file to. Type in a little message to them, an email message, because they're going to get notified in Outlook and they're going to get notified in Microsoft Teams. So it's showing me that it's going to use SharePoint, it's going to use the approvals apps, and it's using the notifications apps. I'm going to click Create Flow from the right-hand side. From there, I'm going to choose the email addresses of who I want to send this to, because I want them to look this file over and approve or deny the change or whatever the file is. Maybe I want to go live with this file and give it to everybody, and I want somebody to look it over first. This is how I do that. So I'm going to say I want Jolynn. I'm doing myself, sorry. And I'm going to put in a note, please review this file, blah, blah, blah. I would put in more than that, but just so you could see, I'm going to click Run Flow. This is an instant flow that as soon as you click Run Flow, it automatically sent it out. Now, how do I know what it just did? Let me actually go to my Microsoft Teams. So if I'm in Microsoft Teams, on the left-hand side, in my activity, I received a notification letting me know, it's got to update here, letting me know that I received, got to make sure I'm in the right account. Oh, and I got another update for Teams. Here's the, Jolynn sent this for a request. So here's where I can have a link to the file, and then I can come back into this window and say, I reject or I approve this file and give them a comment. So I have a link right here. I can come down to the bottom and I can say, yes, this is good to go, or no, please change this, and then it's good, whatever the case might be. Now, just so you know, it's actually using the approvals process. So in my document library in the background, it's got a column that says pending approval. So under an approval column, it says pending. So it actually knows where we are at within the stages of it being requested for approval. Once I'm done, I click approve or reject. They will be notified back again, letting them know if it was approved or rejected, and they can see the comments. That to me is one of the easiest workflows and something that I definitely take advantage of. So just so you know, that is unique to using SharePoint document libraries. Matthew, did we have a question?
Yeah, we do. And before I go into it, I'll just remind everyone to please direct your questions to the Q&A section of the webinar, just to help us manage all those questions. But the question is there any way to improve the URL name for staff members? I think what they're getting at is they're wondering, when I send a file, what's the quickest way for staff members to find out where that file is stored, in which folder that file is stored? Because they're sending files and then the employees are interacting with that file, but then when they go back to find the file, they can't find it anymore because they don't know what folder to look for that file in.
So, because one of the things that can happen is we can share the file. So if I go to the share icon, which is available everywhere, it's on the menu all over. So if I click the share icon, what's going to happen is it gives you the ability to do a link. So if I do copy link, I can then go to wherever I need to put the link, and anyone that has that link by default will have rights to that file. So just to show you an example, if I come into a new message, just let me show you this here real quick. If I come into a new message, an email, I could paste that, or I could just paste it as plain text. Plain text doesn't show, so it's really a weird path, a URL that it gives. This URL is showing just the name of the file and that it's an Excel file. But if you go to a specific file, notice that I can edit the hyperlink. So if I want the display name to be different than the actual URL, I could actually put it in as saying it's this document library, this folder, this file. That would be one way that they can do it. So right-clicking on any hyperlink, we have those capabilities of doing that.
Nice.
Otherwise, for me, I usually say, this document library, this folder, but I'm trying to think if there's any other magic that I could think of. Not really.
Yeah, that
Sorry.
would be the best way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Awesome.
so. Now, while
Awesome.
I'm here in Outlook, let me show you. Here's the email that I had received for that approval, just so you know you get a notification in Teams and in Outlook. Also, here's my notification that came back that said it was approved, just so you know that process of how that all goes back and forth. But anyway, let me come back to this document library and finish up with SharePoint so we have time for Teams and OneDrive. But if I go back and right click on a file, just to point out a couple of other things that are available here, and some things, like I said, are specific to SharePoint, but you have your basic things like previewing the file. You can delete a file. You can add it to your favorites, add shortcuts to it. We can rename it. We can pin it so that it stays at the top. We can move it, because if we put it in the wrong document library or whatever, we could always move it or make a copy of it from here as well. We can even get into workflows or the properties of a file. So just so you can see, if I come into the properties of a file, just like being in File Explorer, every file has properties. It gives you the name of it. We can copy a link to it, just so you're seeing what options that you do get. But document libraries to me are my go-to if I want to share the file with other people. OneDrive is for you. That's for the files that you want to work on for yourself. These SharePoint document libraries are for sharing files. So let me take that just a step further and talk about Microsoft Teams. So when I'm in Microsoft Teams and I'm back into my activities category, I'm going to go to the left-hand side because I'm in the new Teams. I'm going to click Chat, because Chat gives me access to my Teams, because that's the new design of the new Teams. So I'm going to go down to one of my teams, and inside every team in SharePoint, Matthew, let me answer your question here first.
All right. Someone's wondering with approvals, if someone has, I think the question is, if someone has permissions to make approvals, can they make edits to the document and send it back for resubmission?
Not in this particular, well, they technically could, but the file is not going to be updated in the original location. You want to do the actual file itself, not send it through that workflow. Send it directly through the application instead, because then they could make their changes, and you can have track changes turned on so that it's tracking the changes that the person is making, and then you can make comments and different things in there. That would probably be the best practice way that I would go.
Okay, yeah. So, and if you wanted to do that, you would use a different feature of SharePoint, not this one.
Correct.
Okay, I have actually a few questions, if you don't mind me continuing.
Sure.
What does the automate option do?
When you are in a SharePoint document library, let me jump back in there just so everybody can see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So when we go into a file, and it doesn't really matter what the file is, when you hesitate on automate, it's giving us that built-in workflow, which is the request sign-off. But if you go to rules, you can actually create or manage rules, and that's where the Power Automate comes into play. We also had that for the entire document library up at the top on the menu going across the top, but this would be specific for a file. So if I want to create a brand new rule to automate this file, this is how I could do that. I don't have to go to Power Automate, then select this file and create it. I could actually do that right from here. Okay. And we have a Power Automate session coming up.
We do, and it is eligible for
Yeah.
CPD credits for accountants. So,
There we go.
all
Okay,
right.
so I hope that helped. Any other
Yeah.
questions before I jump back?
No, those are all the questions for now.
Okay, so let me go back into Microsoft Teams. So when we talk about SharePoint, every time a team is created in Microsoft Teams, it creates a SharePoint site in the background. So in all essence, Teams is SharePoint. So if I go to, I'm in my accounting department team right now, I went to a channel called Accounts Payable. When I click on that, by default, I have a Files tab. That Files tab is a document library. So just so you know, oops, I'm going to close that. Because I have some changes coming, I had updates to my teams. It's giving me notifications. Sorry about that. But anyway, this is my accounts payable channel that I have my files tab, which is a document library. So when I look at the menu going across the top, it's just like if I were in SharePoint, with the exception of open in SharePoint. Because if I want to go directly to SharePoint to work on this document library, I can just click open in SharePoint. There's only a couple of reasons why I might do that. I'll show you that in a second. But otherwise, I could add a shortcut to OneDrive if I want access to it from File Explorer or OneDrive. Otherwise, I have to come into the location to access these files. But as you can see, I could upload, I could add brand new files, but I can work on any of these files by clicking to open it or right click, just like I did in SharePoint. Here from the right click, we see some of the same things, like sharing the file, copying a link. I could even make this a tab going across the top, but otherwise I could delete it, add it to my favorites, rename it, but I could open it in SharePoint as well, because when I come down to the More category, and by the way, we're not seeing the Automate feature directly in here either, so I can't do the alerts or create a rule or send for a request. I don't see those features here, but I could go into checkout. I do have that. I would have access to my file history, my version histories, but some of the features are not available through here. If you want to use all features that are SharePoint related for this document library, go to the menu at the top, click Open in SharePoint. When you click open in SharePoint, it opens the SharePoint site directly related to this team, takes you directly to the document library. Now you will have access to all of the same features that I showed you a minute ago with SharePoint. Because it is SharePoint, but as of today, in Teams, we don't see all the SharePoint functionality. I'm hoping that's going to change because I don't like to have to go open SharePoint to access some of those features. I want it right where I'm at. So hopefully Microsoft will be changing that shortly. But as of right now, just so you know, you do have to go to SharePoint. Okay. But let me go back to Teams, because when you are in Teams and you have a team set up and you create these different channels in that Files tab, every file is available to everybody that has rights to that channel. So if they have rights to the team and it's a public channel, it can have access for everybody. But if it's a private channel, only the people that have rights to that channel will have rights to those files. But otherwise, we're basically getting the same bells and whistles, the capability that we did before. I could create a file in the application like Excel, save it directly into the Teams channel document library. So I can do exactly those same things. So I use Teams a lot. I probably use Teams more than SharePoint because I'm collaborating. I have other collaboration options available in Teams that I'm not getting in SharePoint. Some of them are, but sometimes it's easier to do things in Teams. So I live and breathe in Teams. And so getting yourself comfortable with Teams helps you to understand SharePoint too. So if you want to share things with a specific group of people, think about where should it go. Should it be in a SharePoint site in a specific document library? Is there a team already created that has all these people as members that I want to share it with anyway? Think about where it really should go. Matthew?
Yep. Someone was wondering, is the channel the same as a site?
Not really. When we think about a SharePoint site, we can have an intranet site where it's like we have a hub and then branches off into all these other sites. Here in Teams, we have the name of a team. Inside that, we will have the name of the channel. Everything directly related to the name of the team is organized in channels. Very different than how a SharePoint site is organized. Yes, we can have subsites and have hubs and all those other things, but they're really very different the way that they're organized. But when I talk about this accounting department team, the whole accounting department has access to it. But for accounts payable, that's where everything related to accounts payable will be going. I'll have different apps going across the top. I'll share all the files in there so that everybody related to accounts payable knows where everything is. Okay, hope that helped.
I do have a second question, if I may.
Yes.
Through Teams, each group, each Teams created creates a SharePoint in the back. They're wondering if when you create a Teams, or a group, does it create a SharePoint site behind that group?
So if I just create a Microsoft group, not a team, if a group is created in Microsoft, it does not automatically create a SharePoint site. But if a new team is created, it always creates a SharePoint site by default.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, I hope that helped. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you. You know, the Teams files are SharePoint document libraries. In all essence, that's exactly what it is. But from Teams, we can access SharePoint files, Teams files, and OneDrive files. On the left-hand side here in Teams, and this is where I'm usually at, I can go to OneDrive. So if I click OneDrive from the left-hand side, I'm going to be opening up access to all of my files that are cloud-based. On the left-hand side, I could create a new file. I could go into, right now I'm on home, by the way. I'm on the home category. On the right-hand side, it shows me my recent files across the top. Then I'm going to see a list of my recent files. I can filter by Word documents, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. But here's that last file that I was just in. And I can see it was 22 minutes ago, etc. I can see all the other files that I've recently been in. Doesn't matter where they're coming from. They could have been in a SharePoint document library, in a Teams document library, or my OneDrive. Doesn't matter. That's pretty cool. Plus, on the left-hand side, if I just go to My Files, it's going to show me just my OneDrive. So these are all of my files just for Microsoft OneDrive. If I go back to the internet, just to clarify what I'm talking about, if I go to my Microsoft account, on the left-hand side, I can click OneDrive. It opens the OneDrive app. Same thing through Teams. I get the same things as I did in Microsoft Teams. By the way, Work Smarter with Copilot. It's got all these wonderful new features that are coming out. I won't go through those, but just so you can see, I'm seeing exactly the same thing as I did through Teams. So I don't ever come to the internet to open up my OneDrive. I simply use it in Teams instead. So back here in Teams, in my OneDrive app, this is everything from my OneDrive. So if I create a new file in Excel or wherever, I have it set up that I default to my OneDrive. I can have folders or I can have files, just like we organize any other place, but this is like your old C drive. Your C drive was just for you. OneDrive is just for you. So it's where you want to store your files. And the thing about this is, you know, if you needed to share it with maybe one, maybe two people, we can, but if you know that you want to share it with multiple people and they're part of a SharePoint site or a team, put it in there. It's much easier to manage, it's easier, and you can have everything related to each other all in one central location. But OneDrive is great for your personal files. I never save things to my C drive. Reason being is because my cloud is backed up. So my OneDrive is being backed up. Also, I have version history because it's a cloud-based location. I have other bells and whistles that I can be using. And anything that is cloud-based can also be accessed through a tablet or a mobile device. So we can have direct connection to our business tools on our phones as well. So if I need to work on a file, I can do that directly on my phone. But I'll show you File Explorer with your OneDrive as well. But before I go too much further here, when you look at this folder that I have here called Legal Documents, and notice the icon in the folder itself, if I open this folder, this is actually my document library from SharePoint. So when I was in SharePoint or in a Teams channel file tab, I can add a shortcut to OneDrive for that folder, and it automatically gives me access to it. So remember that 2025 sales products that I did? This is that library. It's another way to access that same document library. I can right click on it and have access to all of these great features without having to go to the SharePoint site to that document library. I can work with that file directly here. But not just here through the OneDrive app. I can do it in File Explorer as well, which I'll get to in just a second. Before I do that, I want to finish on the left-hand side here. So up at the top, you can see that I'm in Legal Documents, which is part of my files. It's a shortcut to SharePoint. If I come back to, these are all of my files and folders. If I go to any of these, like if I go to business information, it's going to show me all my folders within there. If I go into a folder, it shows me all my files like you normally would see. If I right click on a file, I'm not going to get everything that we saw in SharePoint. Because these are my files, I can't set up an alert. Why would I? Why do I want to alert a file when it's my file? Now, technically, I could, if it's a shared file, I could create a rule to do it, but it's not a normal feature because these are our files. But I have a lot of the same things. I could delete it. I could add a shortcut to another location. I could rename it. We can go into the version history from here. So we have some of those same capabilities, but your right click or going to the ... menu will be your kind of your easiest choices. But we also have share. Just like in SharePoint or a Teams document library, we can share a file. So if I have a file that I have in my OneDrive, but I want to share it with a coworker or even somebody outside of my organization, when you come into the share window, it's the same window no matter where you're at. Pay attention to what's in the window because you could put in the name of the people that you want to share it with, type in a message, and send it to email a link. Or you can do the copy link like I showed a little while ago. But the key to this is at the top right where the pencil is. If you click on that drop down, notice by default, they can edit. They can make any changes to the file. I could change it to be can review. So this would be a great option for those people that want to make changes to a file and track changes, that kind of a thing. It can view or can't make changes, but they can just view it, or they can't download it to their own computer. You want to make sure that you're going in and making the appropriate choices. We can also go to the gears icon down at the bottom for link settings. And we even have more choices from here where we could even be setting an expiration date so that the link expires on Friday or whatever the case would be, and we can even set a password for it. So that will give you additional capabilities when it comes to sharing these files. So anyway, you manage a file by right-clicking. If you go back to the left-hand side, you can click Shared. Shared has two categories at the top, shared with you and shared by you. So it filters your list to show which files you have shared versus which files have been shared with you. We have the capability of filtering them by the file type as well. So just so you know, this is a great way just to see the shared files. Also on the left-hand side, if you had set a favorite to a file. The files that you use more frequently, you can see all of your favorites as well. Also, your SharePoint sites, your SharePoint document libraries, and here in OneDrive have their own recycle bin. I don't know if you've ever deleted a file before from your OneDrive, but it will prompt you to confirm you really want to delete it for everybody, because if it was a shared file. But anyway, if I come into my recycle bin, I could choose empty recycle bin to get rid of them. It does have a default of, I think it was 90 days. Files stay there for 90 days and then they clear out. That can be, of course, adjusted by your IT department. But if I needed to restore a file, I could select the file, and then at the top I could click restore, and it will go back to its physical location of where it originated from, just so you know you can do that. Also on the left-hand side, we have browse by file type or files. I can go into people, which is going to show me files related to people that I communicate with on a regular basis. I also can go into meetings, and I can see any files on the right-hand side that were shared during your team's meetings. I could even get into video recordings because that is technically a file. So we have all these great categories on the left-hand side. But this quick access is when you are in a SharePoint document library or a Teams document library, you can add them, you can pin them to the quick access. That was one of the choices when you right-click. Then they are going to be in this list over here on the left. So they can be pinned so that they're always here, so you always have access to them. So if I want to get to my accounting department, instead of going back to Teams again, excuse me, I can go to my quick access, click accounting department, and I have every document library, which is basically my channel names. So here's my channel name, accounts payable. Then I can see all my files and folders that are included in that channel. Pretty cool. Quick, easy access to everything. But let me take this just a step further. I'm going to actually go to File Explorer. I am a very big File Explorer user. Got to put that over here on this screen so you can see it. I'm in File Explorer, and on the left-hand side, I clicked my business OneDrive. This is every folder that you saw when I was back in OneDrive. Everything that was in there under my files and the shortcuts. So when we talked about those shortcuts, we want to add a shortcut from a SharePoint document library. I have all my shortcuts. So if I go down here to legal documents, that's exactly the same folder shortcut to the SharePoint document library that I saw through OneDrive, and it's available through your File Explorer. Through File Explorer, you don't have exactly the same capabilities that you would if you were in the OneDrive app. So if I go to a file and I right-click on it, I'm not going to see the same menu choices that I would if I'm in the actual app itself, but I could go to OneDrive. I could go into properties, I can share it, I can add it to my favorites, I can cut, copy, paste, and do those types of things, but it's a lot different. And as a matter of fact, let me go back to my my OneDrive files, and let's say that I go into this training documents, and I'm going to be working on some Excel files from my Excel folder, and I'm not going to have internet connection. So remember, all of these document libraries and the OneDrive, they're all cloud-based, which means you need an internet connection. But if I'm going to be making a bunch of changes to the folder and all the files, I could actually right-click on a folder or a file, and I can choose always keep on this device. It temporarily saves it to your computer so that if you do not have an internet connection, you'll be able to still work on that file. What would happen is any of the changes are temporarily saved there. As soon as you have an internet connection, it automatically syncs it back up to the OneDrive. But the key to this is you don't want to do this for everything. And you want to come back and turn it back off again. Because if you tried to sync your entire OneDrive to be available locally without an internet connection, you're going to crash. That is way too much on the system. You don't have enough system resources to handle all that. So it's kind of a by folder or by file basis you want to do this. So if I choose always keep on this device, the cloud icon in my status column is going to change. I probably shouldn't have used that folder. It's a big one. Sorry. It's going to change the cloud, and it's going to be a green circle like this. When I'm done and I'm synced back up to my OneDrive again, I'm going to go back to that folder, do a right click, and uncheck that same option. Matthew, did we have a question?
Yeah, we got quite a few that I'd just like to get in before the end of the session today here. The first is, I use Teams all the time, but not SharePoint. When is SharePoint a benefit to use over Teams?
Oh my goodness, what a great question. SharePoint has a lot of capabilities that we do not have in Teams. Let me show you what I mean by that. If I'm in SharePoint site, on the left-hand side, I'm just going to click Home. This is like going to a website. So a SharePoint site looks like a website, but it's not available to the world. It's only available to the people that have the rights to it. I can have a main SharePoint site and then multiple sites underneath it. So this is going to give you access to calendars and quick links to files and information and, all kinds of different things that we do not have available in Microsoft Teams. So just so you can see, if I go to our intranet at the top, this is going to be my main SharePoint site where I can have all these other sites connected to it, just like going to your company website that the public has access to. You can set it up very similar to that, or whoever in your company has rights to create that, where we can have images. We could say, here's a new person starting in this department, and here's some information about them. Here's how you contact them, whatever the case might be. We can have events. We can have videos available, whatever it is that we need. I hope that helped. Very quickly.
Yeah. Okay, the second question is, does SharePoint operate more on names and broad searches, or does it operate more on metadata?
Metadata.
Metadata. Nice.
Metadata.
Quick and easy answer there. And then the last question, and I'll just, before we go into this question, I'll let everyone know that you can now turn your mics on. So if you wish to ask a question, please feel free to turn on your mic, ask that question, or raise your hand, and we can call upon you as well. But we just implement metadata inside the SharePoint created by a group in Teams. How can we implement the same metadata across other groups in the company?
That is beyond the scope of this class today.
Okay.
Do you want to capture who that person is and we can get back to them?
Certainly. Okay. All right. Yeah, if there's any further questions, please feel free to ask those. If not, we'll close out the session for today. So thank you so much, Jolynn, for such a great session. So much to cover with SharePoint. So thank you for covering so much great stuff. For any trading related questions, please feel free to reach out to us at training@smartdolphins.com and visit our website to catch up on our upcoming events. For any other business inquiries, please contact us at info@smartdolphins.com. We'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave us a review on Google. Whether that's for the webinar or your experience with us, it's a huge help. Simply click the link in the chat to access our review page. Your support helps us reach more people and empower them with the tools that they need. Thank you again for joining us today. Here's a quick reminder of our upcoming events. On January 30th, we'll be covering cybersecurity critical fundamentals. And then on February 5th, we'll be covering Power Automate for finance professionals and accountants, which is an event that is eligible for CPT hours. On February 13th, we'll be covering ChatGPT, exploring the latest features and updates. Please visit our website for details and registration. Thanks again, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.